Record Story, Chapter 7. Ochako was flying. Well, more like falling, but it felt like flying. It was great and all, up until she fell into a wall, or threw up from using her quirk on herself for too long. Over the last few days, Ochako had been working on a technique in secret. She had even kept it a secret from Izuku. Ochako peeled herself off of the wall she had just fallen into. With a groan, she walked back to her starting position. The idea had started when she had discovered her ability to manipulate the direction of gravity. She had practiced enough to consistently manipulate gravity on other objects, but she was limited with how much she could do it to herself. Ochako took a quick breath and jumped up in the air, changing the direction of gravity to the side, towards the building about 15 paces in front of her. She accelerated towards the wall, and felt the wind blowing by her face. It was liberating. When she was about 5 paces from the wall, she changed her direction of gravity to being up and behind her, so that she would slow her horizontal speed, and instead start to go upwards. Luckily this time, she cut off just in time, so instead of slamming into the wall, she flew straight up, rising up the side of the building. Ha ha! She cheered with sheer joy as she kept falling into the sky, rising above the brick building she was standing next to. She released the hold of gravity on herself, allowing her body to float in midair, about 50 feet off the ground. Ground. She looked around her. The night lights of Tokyo speckled the dark night sky, like little pepperings of light in a palette of blackness. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Whoa. She looked over the scene. Learning to pseudo-fly seemed to have opened an entire new world. She spun around, and behind her was the ocean, blue water looking black at this time of night. Night. The moon was overhead, shining like a beacon in the darkness. I have to show Deku this. She realized. The scene laid out below her was one of the most beautiful things she had ever seen, and she wanted to share it with one of the most important people to her. As much as she would have liked to stay up there forever, she started to feel queasy, so it was time to head down. She released her quirk, allowing gravity to reassert itself. She gained speed as she fell to the ground, and when she got close, she reversed gravity towards the sky, slowing her fall. She released her quirk once more and fell to the ground unharmed. Ochako keeled over, resisting the urge to vomit. She had only been in the air for all of 40 seconds, and already felt like she was going to die. Going to have to work on keeping that going for longer. That was the most liberating experience I think I've ever had, she told herself, recovering from the queasiness. She decided it was time to throw in the towel. It was late and she needed to be up early to train with Izuku the next morning. As she walked back to the dorm room, she couldn't help but think what it would be like to fall through the sky, almost like she was flying. Ochako woke to the sound of her alarm a few hours later. She slapped the clock with a groan, rubbing her eyes to force herself awake. Between secretly training late at night and waking up early to train with Izuku, she was getting 5 hours of sleep a night at the very best. She forced herself to stand up so she didn't fall asleep accidentally. She got changed into her workout clothes quickly and rushed out the door to meet Izuku. The two made their way back down to the beach, and Ochako could tell from Izuku's demeanor that he was nervous. She put her hand on his shoulder. "Are you nervous?" she asked. Izuku looked over to her, his mouth pursed tightly. He just nodded. "Promoted stories. You'll also like. Not all heroes wear capes. Some just have 8.43.1 K 1.4 kilo. Everybody. This is a suicidal, depressed Deku book with Dadmic. Will their bond grow? Will Mike fuck up? Will Izuku try to kill himself? Find out yourself. Number 1 Radio. I am. Sequel of. You are check mark 69.5K 1.8K. This book is the sequel of. You are so better read that first before going here. Tears of joy, tears of joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. After all. Fluke 11.4K 802. Will edit once I'm free. N. This is a work of fiction, and any similarity with other works is purely coincidental. Excuse grammatical errors and misspellings. Eng. Free. Oni Shots 150K3K. This is a collections of free X readers. Requests on this are now closed. The Kings and Queen Yandere Wakfu X reader 59.1K 1.8 Kyonder. Wakfu X reader. Images do not belong to me unless stated. Wakfu does not belong to me, it belongs to Enigma. This is being rewritten in another book on my profile. Profile. The hero who sings with a smile 39.9K 368 high. Guys, this is my first story I write on Wattpad. I hope you like it. Return of Mokuden discontinued 3.5K 45. This story is officially up for adoption. If anyone is interested, message me or comment on the story. Ochako knew that fighting Bakugo was going to be stressful for Izuku. Izuku, even through all the bullying and shit he got from Bakugo himself, looked up to the spiky-haired blonde. She knew that he had bad experiences with Bakugo, and that they haunted him. She knew that even though Izuku should hate Bakugo, that he still cares for the boy and wants to see him become a better person. That is why she knew this match they would be having in a few hours' time was going to be hard on Izuku. And she was going to be there for him. "We'll win, you hear?" She gave him a big smile. "I still haven't gotten my revenge on him for the sports festival, you know." Izuku chuckled. "Thank you, Uraraka," he said, visibly relaxing as tension dissipated from his shoulders. For what? She asked. For being you. Ochako decided to lighten her run a little bit, as she needed to save some energy for the big fight today. They were going up against one of the big three of their first year's class. Ochako looked out over the beach as she waited of Izuku to finish his extra distance, and couldn't help but smile. He may deny it every time someone brings it up, but he is definitely one of the big three. She thought as she watched Izuku. He was just too humble for his own good. Ochako migrated over to the concrete staircase she had watched the sunrise with Izuku on the day before. She took a big gulp of water and plunged into her own thoughts about the match today. She was nervous, sure, but she had a feeling she wasn't nearly as nervous about the entire situation as Izuku was. She could see it in the way he ran. He was dragging his feet, like he wasn't focused on his body, as if his mind were elsewhere. She could see him shaking his head every once in a while, like he was rejecting an idea that he had come up with. Ochako watched with concern until Izuku finally finished his run and walked over to the staircase. Just as he sat down, the sun peeked out from over the horizon. You must have timed it, she teased. He looked at her in confusion. Huh, he grunted. Just as you finished your run, the sun came out. We can watch it together again. She gave a big smile, trying to relax him. Weird, he said simply. He leaned back, putting his arms back behind him to lean on. They sat in silence for a few moments. So I was going over hypothetical battle situations and, I could tell. Ochako interrupted. He looked over in confusion. I could tell by the way you were running that you were fixating on the match. She explained. Oh, he said, before tentatively continuing. Well, I was thinking of what strategy we could use. We know that Kachan is going to be aggressive, so we definitely need to play off of that. He also wouldn't give us time to pull off that thing that we've been working on. Izuku started muttering up a storm. Well, there he goes. Ochako said as Izuku started to mutter. And we can't forget about Zero. He works well with Kachan's aggressive nature, because he can just pull him out if the situation gets bad. So then I came to the conclusion that we just need to take out Zero first. But we can't get close, as Kachan can just blow us back like he did with you at the sports festival. Deku. Ochako tried to interrupt to no avail. So then I was thinking. Earth to Deku. That we could. It didn't look like he was going to stop. You know what? Screw it. Ochako took a deep breath and leaned over and planted a kiss on Izuku's cheek. She forced her blush from overtaking her face. Good news is that it worked. Izuku opened his mouth, but no noise came out. Ochako couldn't help but giggle at his flustered face. You were talking too much. She explained simply. You need to stop worrying so much. I know that whatever we do, it'll work out. How do you know? He stuttered. Because I'm with you, silly. When we work together, we can't lose. She pumped her fist into the air triumphantly. But, no buts, she interrupted. We'll figure something out at the field. Let's go. A few hours later, Izuku and Ochako were sitting in the preparation room, getting ready for the match. Theirs was the first one of the day, unlike the previous 2 days. Izuku looked deep in thought. We've got this, she said, trying to pull him out of his brooding state. He gave her a weak smile. He opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted by a knock in the door. Match time. Izuku just nodded to Ochako and the two made their way to the field. Ochako walked up the staircase with Izuku by her side, and despite the hard match she was in for, she felt unstoppable. She tended to feel that way when she was around Izuku. She made it onto the large dirt field to see Bakugo already on the other side, scowling. He was staring straight at Izuku. The green-haired boy gulped and nodded to Ochako. Remember, stay behind me if this doesn't work. We have to improvise the entire rest of the match. He muttered out of the side of his mouth. Ochako nodded, and stood a good distance behind Izuku. Are you ready? Present Mike called out. Izuku looked up and nodded at the press box. Then start. The match started instantly with activity, contrary to Izuku and Ochako's last match. Bakugo took off at a sprint straight at Izuku, who had charged up full cowl. Ochako braced herself as Izuku drew back his entire arm, which was crackling with lightning. Los Angeles, he yelled, and his entire right arm thrummed with energy. Bakugo was less than 10 paces away now. Smash! Izuku threw his arm forward, releasing a blast of wind pressure. Unlike his finger flicks, this punch released way more force. Ochako was standing behind Izuku and was almost knocked off her feet. Ochako watched as Bakugo was torn off the ground and sent towards the back of the field. The match wasn't over, however. Just before Bakugo sailed out of bounds, a strip of white tape wrapped itself around Bakugo's torso. Zero also attached another strip to the ground, anchoring himself and Bakugo in place. Izuku stepped back, massaging his right arm. Luckily, Bakugo didn't immediately attack again. Well, that didn't work, she said simply. No, Bakugo and Zero must have planned that out. He said, grimacing. What do we do next? Ochako was interrupted. Are you going to fight me, or are you going to sit in the back of the field like a coward? Bakugo's voice projected across the field. Izuku froze on the spot. Deku, what? Are you going to respond, or are you going to be a little bitch about it? Bakugo's voice boomed. Deku, he's just trying to rile you up. Ochako warned, but she wasn't sure that her words were heard. Izuku's body was frozen, save his arms, which were shaking softly as Izuku clenched his fists. If there was one thing Ochako knew, it was that she couldn't stand seeing Izuku like his. What? Can't take a little shit talk. Quote dot. Bakugo sneered. I always such a. Shut up, Ochako said, just loud enough that Bakugo could hear. What did you say, round face? He called back. Ochako looked up. I told you to shut up. She smirked, because you never know how to shut that mouth of yours. Izuku looked over to Ochako, confused, but broken out of his stupor. Across the field, Bakugo looked like he was getting angry. What the fuck do you mean? Shut up. Bakugo took an aggressive step forwards. What are you doing? Izuku muttered under his breath. Watch. When Bakugo rushes us, go for Zero. She said. The plan was forming in her head, and she hoped it wouldn't work. You're coaxing him into attacking you. Are you insane? He asked. Probably. She joked. but I know that you can blow him out of the ring with one shot if Zero isn't there. So, you take out Zero, and I'll be the distraction. Across the field, Bakugo looked even angrier. Are you going to answer? I said what the fuck did you say to me? He took another step forwards. Ochako, I can't let you do that. He could hurt you. Izuku protested. Does it look like I'm giving you much of a choice? Before Izuku could respond, Ochako raised her voice and called across the field once more. I told you to shut your mouth. Have you ever thought about the fact that maybe people don't want to hear what comes out of your mouth? Bakugo's face was red with anger, but Ochako wasn't done yet. Ever thought about that maybe the world doesn't revolve around you? That's it. Bakugo roared, letting loose explosions behind him to launch himself forwards, straight at Ochako. Deku. Now, Ochako yelled as she ran straight at the blonde-haired boy flying towards him. Any worries that Izuku may have had dissolved as he followed orders, flaring up full cowl and dashing for Zero. Ochako bolted straight at Bakugo, who had his eyes set on Ochako, just like she wanted. At least, they were fixated on her until Izuku's green lightning streaked past them. Bakugo's head turned and followed Izuku's form. No, Ochako thought panicked. St. Louis smash, Izuku called, unleashing a powerful kick that sent Zero flying straight out of bounds. But just as he did, Bakugo changed directions with a blast, and came up behind Izuku. The green-haired boy barely had enough time to turn around before he was met with a massive explosion that sent him flying outbounds as well. Deku, Ochako cried, stumbling to a stop. Her mind flashed back to the alleyway. Bakugo turned back to Ochako, anger on his face. It's you and me, round face. He sneered, spitting off to the side. Ochako looked past her opponent to see Izuku planted in the concrete wall. Knocked out cold hot anger welled up inside Ochako. Bakugo took off at a leisurely walk towards Ochako. He thought he could just come in and take her out without a problem. Ochako mentally prepared herself. You've practiced this. You've got it, she told herself. It's just like floating. Bakugo was still a fair distance away. Just give up. I've already destroyed Deku. Not like you can do much else. He spat. The hot anger that had been stewing in Ochako's stomach welled up. You know you were wrong about him, right? When you gave him that nickname. She said. Bakugo froze. You gave him that nickname to make him seem useless. She laughed in a monotone voice. Anger was in full force in her voice, but it's kind of ironic. What do you mean, ironic? That bastard is useless and everyone knows it. Bakugo took one step forwards. Isn't it, though? I mean, if he is really useless, then what does that make you? He's already saved more people than you have. It was smug, but Ochako didn't care. What the fuck does that matter? Bakugo yelled back. He was getting angry. If he's useless, then you're worse than that. Deku's already gone out and saved a boy from being murdered by a villain. Then, he saved a little girl who had been kidnapped and tortured. What have you done? Get captured by villains and have to be rescued. It was harsh, but at this point Ochako was fuming. She was angry. Bakugo froze at her words. She could see him trembling. She suddenly felt all the more confident. But that's none of my business. She immediately changed her direction of gravity and fell straight towards Bakugo. The boy looked shocked by her immediate speed and raised his hand to blast her back. With a jerk, Ochako changed her direction of gravity for a split second to the right so she dodged the blast. She reared her fist back and punched with all the force she had, and with the extra speed from falling into him, threw a punch. The hit nailed Bakugo in the jaw and sent him reeling. Ochako reversed her direction of gravity, slowing to a stop. You fucking. Bakugo started. Why do you treat Deku the way you do? She interrupted. Bakugo looked up at her, rubbing his jaw from where she hit him. Granted, she could have sent him flying out of the ring and ended the match then and there, had she used her quirk on him, but she didn't care. She didn't care if she won or lost now she had things to say, and she was going to say them. I treat Deku like that because he deserves it. Bakugo spat. Deku has done nothing but get in the way and look down on me. I was supposed to get into UA alone, but he went out and got in just to spite me. Then, he goes out and puts on this face about wanting to help people, but all that does is get in the way of me becoming number one. Ochako was dumbfounded. Are you really that fucking dense? Ochako yelled. She didn't normally cuss, but at this point, she didn't care. She was pissed off. Bakugo leered, staring down Ochako. Has it ever occurred to you, in your entire life, that other people have dreams too? What the? Deku doesn't want to be a hero so he can spite you, you dumb asshole. He wants to be a hero so he can help people. He wants to make the world a better place. But what do you want? You just want to be number one, at the expense of others. You tear them down, just to build yourself up. Ochako was seething with anger. She changed her direction of gravity so she fell straight towards Bakugo. Then again, twice more, 3 times. She layered them on top of another, pulling herself downwards at many times the normal speed of falling. Bakugo didn't even have time to react as Ochako's foot hit his side with a massive amount of force, and Ochako felt his ribs crack. She pulled herself as Bakugo fell to his knees, clutching his side. Why did that bastard, Bakugo mumbled, have to pick fucking Deku? All he does is mess it up. Why not me? Ochako had no idea what the blonde was talking about, but his words made her all the more angry. Open your eyes, Bakugo. Look around you. Does the rest of the world revolve around you? She gestured to the entire stadium. Other people have dreams. Other people have things they want to do. Things they want to work for. Is that such a hard concept to grasp? Ochako didn't even have to use her quirk. She was able to walk up to Bakugo's kneeling form as he tried to get up, and kick him right in the stomach, causing him to vomit. All he does is look down on me. Bakugo said weakly. Deku doesn't look down on you, Bakugo. Do you know what your twisted mind is misinterpreting? Deku fucking cares about you. He sees you as a friend, even if you don't. Ochako called. Bakugo staggered to his feet, barely standing but not wanting to give in. What the fuck do you care? He said harshly. Why do you care what I think about that bastard? I care because Deku is my best friend. Ochako cried. Tears were brimming at her eyes from a mix of anger and sadness. If you would just see what was around you, Bakugo. Step out of your delusion for just a moment. Look at your classmates and how much they care about each other. Then look at yourself. Look at how they look at you. That look isn't them looking down on you. That's them being disappointed in you for being such an asshole. Fuck you, he said, trying to take a step forwards. Ochako just stepped forwards and socked him in the face, sending him to the ground once more. Bakugo, tell me. She said, her voice seething with rage, why do you want to be a hero? Don't tell me it's to be number one, because you could go and be a number one villain. What part of you is on the side of the angels, because I have yet to see it. He looked up at her with rage in his eyes, but when he tried to lunge for her, he fell back down, clutching his side. When is the last time you fought for someone in need, or for something that wasn't your damn massive ego? When was the last time you saw good in someone instead of malice that wasn't there? Ochako grabbed his face and made him look at her. Does it matter to you at all what it actually means to be a hero? Because Deku wants to be a hero. You want to be number one. There's a difference. She let go of his face, throwing him to the ground. Bakugo was shaking on the ground, but he managed to stand once more. I'll kill you, he said, limping towards Ochako who was walking away from the boy. There's one more thing you need to realize, Katsuki fucking Bakugo. It's that using people around you as stepping stones or treating them like garbage makes you completely unworthy of standing by them. She said, throwing every bit of emotion into her voice as she had. He was standing 10 paces away from her. Bakugo Katsuki, you may become a hero, but you will never really be a hero. Ochako said. She layered as many gravitational forces as she could in the direction of Bakugo. The vertigo made her nearly vomit alone, but she powered through it. With a shriek of emotion, Ochako flew at Bakugo, who weakly raised an arm to try to fend her off. Ochako swung her fist, amplified in force by her many instances of gravity on her body. The punch landed and Ochako felt not only Bakugo's jaw crunch, but felt her own bones in her hand crack. Bakugo fell to the ground. Bakugo is unconscious. Team Uraraka and Midoriya wins. Midnight raised her right hand, signifying the end of the match. Ochako flexed her hand while sitting in one of Recovery Girl's chairs. Her last punch she had thrown had broken 3 of her knuckles and sprained her wrist. But it had been worth it. Someone had needed to put Bakugo in his place, and she felt like she had done a pretty good job at that. She had meant every word she had said to the blonde, as well. Now, Ochako was sitting in Recovery Girl's office, waiting for Izuku to wake up. Also in the room was Bakugo, who was still unconscious. Zero had woken up a few minutes previous, and left to go watch Tokiyami and Todoroki's match. As much as Ochako wanted to go watch to see who would win, she didn't want to leave without Izuku. It didn't feel right. You can leave, you know. Recovery Girl said. You don't have to stick around. Ochako shook her head. I'll wait for Deku to wake up, thanks though. She responded. You really gave him quite the beating, you know. She nodded to Bakugo's sleeping form. Someone needed to, was all she said. We couldn't hear what you were saying down on the field, but you looked pretty fired up. Did he say something? Ochako shook her head again. He's been saying things for the last year, and I had enough. She said it, like she wasn't going to elaborate. I will admit, I was pretty angry. I don't usually cuss that much. The sweet, innocent, Uraraka. Cussing. I never thought I'd see the day. She joked. It elicited a small laugh out of Ochako. There was a knock on the door. Come in, Recovery Girl said. A blond man with a scrawny form walked through the door. All might, Ochako said, jumping up from where she was sitting. Good afternoon, young Uraraka. He greeted her before looking to the two boys that were laying on the hospital beds. How are they? He asked nervously. They're just fine. Recovery Girl said that they would be awake soon. Ochako said cheerily. All Might nodded. You really gave young Bakugo a beating, didn't you? He said, pressing his fingertips together. Ochako scowled, not without reason. All Might nodded once again. I'll let you go then. Have a good day, young Uraraka. All Might said, leaving. He looks much more nervous than before. Maybe it's his new form. She wondered. Her thoughts were interrupted as there was a shuffling of the covers on the bed next to her. Deku, you're awake, she said excitedly, scooching over so she was right next to his bed. He groaned and rubbed his eyes. Uraraka, he asked groggily, what happened? Happened. Look to your other side, silly. She giggled, pointing across him. Izuku looked over at Bakugo's unconscious body and his eyes went wide with shock. You won? He asked, incredulous. Yup, she said happily. Uraraka. That's amazing. How did you do it? Did you get hurt? He asked a flurry of questions. Questions. Slow down there. She interrupted him. I can explain the details later. Just know that I won, and it was all because of you. His mouth opened wide. Be because of me. What did I do? He still seemed to be recovering from the shock. Her words she had yelled at Bakugo due to sheer anger replayed in her mind. Deku doesn't want to be a hero so he can spite you, you dumb asshole. He wants to be a hero so he can help people. I care because Deku is my best friend. Bakugo Katsuki, you may become a hero, but you will never really be a hero. The only reason she had said those things is because of how much she cared about Izuku, and it hurt her to see how much Bakugo looked down on him. How much Bakugo had made Izuku hurt for caring about him. Just trust me on this. I can explain it later. I think you'll figure it out when the recordings come to the dorms tonight. She said softly. She couldn't properly explain what she had done and said to Bakugo. It was easier for him to see firsthand. Okay, I believe you, he said with a smile. Ochako's shoulders loosened. One thing, though. Why did you wait, foe? Izuku was cut off by the door to the room opening. Mina and Kirishima limped into the room, crashing together onto one of the hospital bed. Hiroshima's entire right side of his shirt was burned away, and was limping, leaning on Mina for support. Mina was covered in small burns. Whoa, are you guys okay? Izuku got up out of his hospital bed and rushed over to the couple. Yeah, I think. We took a beating, but we at least put up a fight. Hiroshima exclaimed, but he sounded tired. You guys look in rough shape. Ochako added. Not only were they covered in small burns, but also bruises littered their bodies. Yeah, that's my fault. Mina said nervously, scratching the back of her neck. I kind of forgot my acid is flammable. She admitted. Oh, so your match with Todoroki is already over. Izuku asked. Both of the others nodded. Well, all it means is you and Uraraka have to fight them tomorrow. Good luck, Mina said with as much energy as she could muster. Izuku gave her a thumbs up in return. Good. Now that you're awake, get out of my area. I need that bed you were using. Recovery girl shooed Izuku and Ochako out of the room, slamming the door behind her before the two even realized what was going on. Izuku looked at Ochako. Want to go back to the dorms? I thought you'd never ask. I'm so tired. Katsuki woke up in a hospital bed, and he was alone. He looked around, trying to figure out why he was there. Then the memories of his fight with Deku and Round Face came flooding back. Katsuki scowled. How could I lose to her? Her and stupid damn he cut himself off. Round Face's words echoed in his mind, and he suddenly felt numb. Deku doesn't want to be a hero so he can spite you, you dumb asshole. He wants to be a hero so he can help people. If you want to be number one, you could have just gone and been the number one villain. Bakugo Katsuki, you may become a hero, but you will never really be a hero. Bakugo's breath caught in his throat. She couldn't possibly be right, right. She was just trying to get a reaction out of him. He was Katsuki Bakugo. He was the future number one hero. Nobody could seriously say otherwise. Right. Deku isn't all virtuous and shit like she said. He told himself. Right. But then why did All Might pick him over me? When is the last time you fought for someone in need, or for something that wasn't your damn massive ego? Her voice echoed in his head again. Bakugo shook his head, wanting the doubts to go away. Bakugo brought his knees to his chest. He needed time to think. There isn't any way Deku is better than me. Right. What part of him really wanted to be a hero? There was a part there. Right. Bakugo had a lot to think about. A lot that he didn't want to think about. For the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo cried. Chapter 8. Izuku was in shock. The things she had heard Uraraka say, on his behalf. It shocked him to his core. The fact that she cared so much about him that she would go to the point of beating Bakugo to a pulp. The fact that she hadn't given up, even though he had gotten knocked out. It was inspiring, to say the least. He was glad that Uraraka wasn't with him, because he wouldn't know what to say to her. He was having trouble processing what had happened alone, and it would be much harder with her there. Yet, he knew that he needed to talk to her about it. He needed to discuss why she said what she said. Not that Izuku was unhappy with a single word that had come out of his friend's mouth, because he was far from sad. He was relieved that someone had finally stood up to Bakugo. The words she used were harsh, sure, but Izuku knew they had needed to be. Nobody up to that point had called Bakugo out on his bullshit, and sugarcoating the issue would have been ineffective. He was sitting in his room after watching the recording of Uraraka's fight against Bakugo. The way she fought with passion, not giving up or letting up, even when it was obvious she was going to win. It made him proud to call her his best friend. It was also a wake-up call to see Uraraka filled with so much anger. Normally, she was careless and easygoing. Optimistic and happy. But the fire in her eyes when she fought Izuku's childhood friend. Izuku shook his head to ground himself back to reality. He had to get going to bed. He had a big match the next day. He needed to get rested up so that he could be in prime condition for the finale. Ochako was back on the practice field at midnight, practicing the new applications of the new aspect of her quirk at around midnight. She had better control over the quirk now, and she could fly continuously for nearly a minute before feeling nauseous. Ochako took a deep breath, preparing to go at it again. While she could get in the air, her control was abysmal, and if she even wanted a shot of fighting while airborne, she would have to need to practice a lot more. With a sigh, she took to the air once more. Ochako jumped, disabling her gravity for a few moments so that she floated into the air about 20 feet. She slowed herself with a downward instance of gravity. She really needed a new way of saying that. Ochako looked over the city of Tokyo and almost stopped her training on the spot to look over the mesmerizing view. Ochako shook her head. No, I can't stay for too long. Ochako began the song and dance that she had made as an exercise for practicing directional control. She fell to the side, letting herself gain speed, before doubling back in the opposite direction. The exercise was to practice a technique she had been practicing. The point was to have a target at a certain position, and fly back and forth, hitting them with flyby attacks. It would be more efficient the faster she could go. She had also practiced this technique indoors, and it had been much more effective. She was able to kick off of the walls to change her direction more quickly. She did not have that luxury most of the time, though, since most of her battles took place in an open area. Ochako dashed back and forth, changing her direction as fast as she could. It was still slow, and she was still inexperienced, so it still looked sloppy, but it was better than nothing. Ochako let herself fall softly to the ground to recover some energy. She took a few deep breaths to steady herself. As she rested, her thoughts went back to the punch that had broken her hand and Bakugo's jaw. Somehow, she had layered multiple instances of gravity on herself, causing much more force to go into the punch. Problem was, she hadn't been able to replicate it no matter how hard she tried. She was only able to change her direction of gravity, not amplify it fully. Recovered, she decided to have another go at it. She launched herself into the air, floating in place for a moment once more, looking over the twinkling yellow lights of the city sprawled out below her. The lights were twinkling like stars, like they were luring her in. Ochako couldn't take it anymore. She had gone night after night after night of flying into the sky, just to see the city from above and do nothing about it. She knew she could fly, in a sense. She just hadn't tried it yet. Here we go, she said, steeling herself. With a breath, She changed her direction of gravity and took off towards the city. She felt herself start off slowly, before picking up speed. Wind whipped around her, rippling her clothes. The cold touch grazed across her skin as she kept going faster and faster. Ochako's hair blew out of her face as the lights of the city streaked below her. Ha ha! Ochako shrieked with joy. It was liberating. She was able to take to the place where nobody else had claim to. The skies were hers to explore. Only when she looked down did she realize how fast she was going. The lights streaked by faster than she could track them. The wind roared in her ears. The city was hundreds of feet below her, but the clouds were far from close above her. But even those streaked by Ochako slowed herself and slowly realized something. She had crossed miles upon miles in the span of a minute or less. New way to travel, huh? She joked with herself. When Ochako touched back down in front of the 1A dorm building, the land felt like it was a foreign place. Which was ridiculous, since she had only been in the air for all of 3 minutes. Even so, she couldn't wait until she got the opportunity to take to the skies once more. Dash dot. Izuku met Uraraka for a morning run as per usual by this point. They went through the normal routine, going down to the beach, running, then watching the sunrise together. It really was one of the most relaxing things in the world, and not because of the scenery. Just being able to spend a morning with Uraraka was enough to calm Izuku's nerves. Not only that, but today's match wasn't nearly as stressful for him as the previous days had been. Hey Deku, Uraraka got his attention as they watched the sun rise over the horizon. Izuku hummed. You seem more relaxed today. Uraraka mused. Izuku shrugged in response. I guess I am yesterday's match had a lot of emotional pressure for me, I guess. Today's though, I'm not too worried about. Uraraka gave him a quizzical look. I mean, it's not like I'm not going to try my best. It's just that I talked with Todoroki last night. Oh, what about? It was just him wishing me luck with tomorrow. We don't have any hard feelings between us anymore, and so this is much more of a whoever wins wins, you know. Izuku explained. Uraraka nodded in understanding, looking back to the horizon. They sat in peace for a few moments. We can do that thing we've been working on today, right? Uraraka spoke up. If you feel up to it, I mean, it is our last chance, so I don't see why not. Izuku shrugged. Uraraka silently cheered. Soon enough, the sun was well over the distant waters, signaling Izuku and Uraraka to move on to their quirk practice. They got up and walked in tandem to the field. Soon enough, it was time for the finale. The entirety of Class 1A walked to the arena together, all while chattering about the upcoming match. The only person absent was Bakugo. Maybe he's still in the nurse's office. Izuku wondered. My money's on Midoriya and Uraraka, Kaminari said, interrupting Izuku's thoughts. No way. Todoroki and Tokiyami are totally going to win. Mina protested. Want to bet? How much? Everyone. Iida interrupted. It is disgraceful to place bets on our classmates like that. Party pooper. Kaminari mumbled. The class laughed, and continued on their way. Eventually, everyone made it to the arena, and the contestants had to split off from the group that was going to be in the stands. It was an awkward silence that hung in the air as the two opposing teams walked together to the preparation rooms. Neither wanted to start up a conversation that would last all of the 30 seconds it took for the two to split away. So, they just walked, each contemplating how to beat the other, until it was time for Todoroki and Tokiyami to go to their room, and Izuku and Uraraka to go to theirs. Midoriya. Todoroki interrupted, stopping. Izuku spun around to see Todoroki holding out his hand. Good luck. Izuku realized he was holding his hand out for a handshake. Izuku smiled, firmly grasping his friend's hand. Good luck, he said in response. Yeah, good luck, you guys. Uraraka added. Tokiyami just nodded, keeping quiet. So, you're sure you can't break the ice block without breaking one of your fingers? You can't just flick it or something? Uraraka asked. No, at my current ability level, without my gloves, the wind bullet isn't concentrated enough. If I had my equipment, then maybe, but not without it. Uraraka hummed, thinking. And we can't fight of his first attack without it. Izuku added. As powerful as Todoroki was, he was predictable. Everyone knew he was going to start by a massive ice attack. Uraraka threw her arms up in frustration. I just wish you wouldn't have to hurt yourself in order to win. Izuku went over and put his hand on her arm. I'll be fine, I promise. In reality, Izuku was worried as well. He knew he shouldn't be destroying his hands for the sake of a fight like this, especially considering the condition of them. Will you? Uraraka said softly. I just don't want to see you get hurt. I've seen enough. Her expression alone made Izuku reconsider the entire situation. Then, an idea hit him. I might not have to. He breathed. Uraraka looked at him. Okay. This is going to sound a bit weird, but hear me out. Izuku and Uraraka walked up the stone staircase with renewed vigor. They had a plan that didn't involve Izuku breaking himself, so that was a plus. They made it onto the field to see Todoroki and Tokiyami on the other side. Izuku raised his hand in salute. Todoroki returned the gesture, causing Izuku to smile. Are the contestants ready? Present, Mike yelled. Izuku looked up to the box and gave another nod. Todoroki, instead of giving a confirmation, waved his hands around and the crowd quieted down. Do you guys like your green tea hot? He shot a stream of fire into the air, or ice cold. The crowd roared. Huh, Izuku thought. Is he talking about us? Uraraka asked out of the corner of her mouth. I think so, don't know why. Green tea, is us though. Izuku responded, equally clueless. Todoroki smirked before giving a thumbs up to the press box. Some trash talk. That's new coming from the normally quiet Todoroki. Present, Mike said. Anyways, it's the time you've all been waiting for. Match start. Just as everyone had expected, Todoroki started the match off by taking a step forwards with his right foot, ice collecting and streaking towards Izuku and Uraraka. Izuku went over and grabbed Uraraka by the waist, charging one for all in his legs to 20%. Just as Izuku kicked off the ground, Uraraka activated her zero gravity on the both of them. Izuku and Ochako soared into the air, flying at least 100 feet above the ground, avoiding the gargantuan ice attack easily. Uraraka manipulated their gravity to slow them to a stop so that they didn't go flying out the roof of the arena. Phew. Izuku wiped sweat from his brow. Everything had been banking on their ability to dodge that first attack. They had a chance now. Deku. Uraraka said. You can let go of my waist now. She said. Only then did Izuku realize he had been clutching her against his own body. Panicked, Izuku let go, growing red in the face. I'm so sore. Uraraka and Midoriya take to the skies to avoid the legendary first attack. Now they're where Todoroki and Tokiyami can't touch them. Present Mike interrupted Izuku's apology. Focus, Izuku. What next? He looked down, trying to figure out the next course of action. He saw a massive ice sculpture and... Wait, Uraraka. Izuku smirked. Want to do the thing? She gave him a quizzical look. Here, just grab onto me again. As awkward as it is complying, Uraraka grabbed onto Izuku. Deactivate your gravity. I'll catch us. Completely trusting Izuku's judgment, she released them from the skies, letting them fall to the ground. They soared towards the ground, and Izuku charged 20% one for all in his finger. Three, two, one. Now, Izuku flicked, and a blast of wind pressure came out of his hand, slowing their fall. The two landed harmlessly on top of the ice Todoroki had left behind. Uraraka, be ready to activate your quirk on this. Izuku gestured to the ice they were standing on. She put her hand on flat against it before giving him a nod. She knew what they were doing now. Izuku charged 20% one for all into his leg before slamming his foot into the ice. A large crack spread into the block. Izuku kicked again and the crack lengthened. He kicked again and again, each time weakening the ice. On the 12th kick, the ice shattered into hundreds of pieces, but instead of falling to the ground, the ice chunks floated in the air due to Uraraka's quirk. Izuku and Uraraka fell to the ground, but floating in front of them were hundreds of baseball-sized chunks of ice. Izuku smiled as he saw the looks in Todoroki and Tokiyami's eyes as they realized what was happening. Izuku charged 20% one for all into four of his fingers, preparing a flick. Special move, he and Uraraka said in unison. Detroit Meteor Smash. Izuku flicked all of his fingers at once, causing the ice to fly at a blinding speed towards their opponents. Tokiyami threw up Dark Shadow to block the attack, but a particularly large block struck him, sending him flying back, nearly out of bounds. Bounds. He was able to stop himself though, and he stayed in bounds and threw up Dark Shadow again to the rest of the attack. Todoroki threw up his left arm, and the entire field was bathed in orange light. Izuku and Uraraka staggered back from the sheer heat of the attack. The fire cleared, leaving Izuku's eyebrows missing, but the field was soaked in water. Todoroki melts the ice attack with a fierce fire blast. Present Mike screams to the battlefield. Not going to be that easy, Midoriya. Todoroki said from across the field. We need to split up. I'll take Todo, Izuku started. No, Uraraka interrupted. You take Tokiyami. I'll take Todoroki. I can at least distract him long enough for you to get Tokiyami. But Todoric, my strategy doesn't work against him, since he has the extra reach of Dark Shadow. She looked Izuku in the eyes. Deku, just trust me. Izuku looked into Uraraka's eyes for a moment, but his decision was easy. I trust you. Ochako walked towards Todoroki on the other side of the battlefield. She was mentally preparing herself. Come on, you've got this. It's just like practice. It's just like last night. She told herself. Across the field, Todoroki realized it wasn't Izuku walking to fight him, but instead it was Ochako. His face was at least a little surprised, unlike his normal neutral expression. Ochako broke into a sprint just as Todoroki did the same. Todoroki grew ice across the ground, hoping to freeze Ochako in place. Not gonna happen, she said, jumping into the air and putting her feet under her. She changed her direction of gravity so that she fell directly at Todoroki. She closed the gap much faster than she ought to have been able to by running, and kicked Todoroki in the thigh as she flew past him. She quickly reversed her gravity so that she slowed to a stop, floating a few feet above the ground. Since when can you fly? Todoroki asked. It's not flying, she said with a smirk, more like falling with style. Ochako let herself fall towards Todoroki once more, who let out a blast of fire at Ochako. She jerked downwards, narrowly avoiding the fire. Since Ochako was now low to the ground, she only had one place to hit. Sorry, Momo, she thought with a grimace as she threw her arm upwards. She fell through the gap in Todoroki's legs and came out the other side. Ouch, that was a low blow in more than one way. Present Mike called out. Ochako felt dirty for that hit, but not too dirty. Ochako started back her attack again, just like she had in practice. Flying back and forth, hitting Todoroki with each successive flyby. She didn't go unharmed, however. She got more than a few scorch marks and even had ice on a few parts of her body. She was running out of juice, as well. Todoroki also looked like he was tiring as well. Ochako renewed her attack, falling at Todoroki, but also being ready for an attack to dodge. He raised his arm just like he had before releasing the firestorm earlier. Oh no, Ochako saw the fire collect in his palm. And then there was a flash of green light in the corner of her vision. Izuku flew in, pooching Todoroki in the powered-up hit. Todoroki went reeling, and Ochako forced herself to a stop, else she hit Izuku. Ochako turned to see Izuku follow up his other punch by reeling his leg back. Manchester. He threw his leg forward before Todoroki could react. Smash! He kicked Todoroki in the face, sending him flying out of bounds. Yeah, Deku. Ochako cheered. She dropped to the ground, deactivating her quirk to give her stomach a rest. Her joy was short-lived, however. She saw a blur of black in the corner of her eye. Tokiyami came out of nowhere, punching Izuku while his back was turned with all the force he could. It wasn't enough to send Izuku flying, but it was enough to knock him off balance. Right out of bounds. Midoriya is out of bounds. Midnight said to Ochako's horror. She was in a 1 versus 1 with Tokiyami. It's just a friendly match. Izuku's words echoed in her mind. You've got this. I believe in you, Uraraka. Izuku said from outside of the ring. Just those were enough to both calm down her nerves and pump her up. Ochako raised herself off of the ground slightly, preparing herself for the battle. Her stomach screamed in protest, but she didn't care. Good luck, Tokiyami, she said, pulling herself towards him. He sidestepped her first attack, and Ochako forced herself to a stop. When she turned around, Tokiyami was running right at her, wearing dark shadow-like a costume. Ochako pulled herself to the side with a yelp, but Tokiyami had more reach than she was expecting. Dark Shadow's claw shot out from his hand, punching Ochako in the stomach. She doubled over, but changed her gravity so she fell into the air, away from another hit. Ochako forgot exactly how far Dark Shadow could go, though. The mass shot up, grabbing Ochako by the foot. Ochako yelped again as she was pulled into the ground, where the shock deactivated her quirk. She tried to get up, but just as she did, Dark Shadow wrapped around her arm again, and whipped her around in a circle. Ochako threw up from the mix of stomach pain and the speed she was moving. This is it, Ochako realized. Not even changing her gravity could help now with one last throw. Ochako went sailing, right across the borderline. Uraraka is out of bounds. Midnight yelled, holding up the flag. Dazed, Ochako looked up, searching for Izuku's eyes, expecting him to be disappointed in her. She lost them the match, after all, but when she saw Izuku's face, he was smiling. You did great, Uraraka. Ochako smiled. Only Deku could make her feel that way. Only Deku could make her feel that fuzzy inside. Tokiyami and Todoroki win. Present Mike yelled. Ochako tried to get up, but her strength failed her, making her collapse back down to the ground. Whoa, Uraraka, you'll be okay. Izuku reassured her, rushing to her side, heaving her into a sitting position. Ochako looked into his eyes and felt her stomach fill with butterflies. She felt the ever-constant affection blossom in her stomach. Ochako was done dancing around feelings. She needed to be with him. She was going to ask him out. Tonight, where stories live. Discover now.